What's going on, everyone? Welcome to The Cause. My name is Rob, and today we are discussing books 9 and 10 of Paradise Lost, which are in Volume 4 of the Harvard Classic series. This is the 5th video in my 6-part series on Paradise Lost. I would highly recommend you go back and you watch the others if you have not. Doing that will allow this episode to just make more sense. We are finally getting into the meat of the story, the deed that we have all been waiting for. Eve picks of the fruit and trespasses against God's sole command. I think you will enjoy books 9 and 10. So let's begin. I will set the stage on where we are at, and then we will move in to the poem, Paradise Lost.
Maybe you got lost somewhere, swimming too far off the beach.
Book 9 Overview. Raphael has just departed from Earth after speaking with Adam and returned to heaven. Satan returns and encompasses the world until he finds a weak spot to enter. To disguise himself, he enters into a sleeping snake. While Adam and Eve are working in the garden, they split up their labors. Satan catches Eve in the garden alone. Deception, beguile, sin, and pride enter the scene. She eats, she falls, Adam follows. And for the first time, the sin of earth enters their souls. Let's move into Book 9. No more talk between man and angel. The warnings, disclaimers, history, and advice are over. It's up to Adam and Eve to simply be obedient. Milton has a line that lets us know that the tone of the poem is about to change, and he uses a plethora of vocab to hammer that point home. I now must change those notes to tragic, foul, distrust and breach, disloyal on the part of man, revolt, and disobedience on the part of heaven. Now, alienated, distance, and distaste, anger, just rebuke, and judgment given, that brought into this world a world of woe, sin, in her shadow death, and misery. Death's harbinger. Sad task. Now Satan retreated away from earth after Gabriel appeared a few books back, but fearless, he returns. He has to sneak back into earth as the angels are keeping a close look out for him. Under the cover of night's darkness, he enters back into the world and finds a creature that is soon to be cursed. With narrow search and with inspection deep, considered every creature, which of all most opportune might serve his wiles, and found this serpent, subdus, beast of all the field. Satan calls the snake a fit vessel, fittest imp of fraud and home to enter. Now Satan is back in full force. He has a plan, and it is not a pleasant one by any means. For only in destroying I find ease to my relentless thoughts. He is hell-bent on accomplishing what he set out to do. He has a great line in which reality hits him that he once was an angel of God, and how now he is the bestial slime of a snake's entrails, from a place of dignity to the belly of a serpent, to deceive. He says, "But what will not ambition and revenge descend to? Who aspires must down as low as high he soared, obnoxious first or last to basest things. Revenge at first, though sweet, bitter, ere long back on itself recoils." Satan has lost all modesty or caring. He is committed to resort to any extreme to finish what he has set out to do. As Satan is entering into the snake, Adam and Eve are heading out for their daily chores, and Eve proposes splitting up to make the work more efficient. Adam pushes back against this idea. "You heard the angel, Raphael. We need to be careful down here because something is out to get us," he said. "Leave not the faithful side that gave thee being, still shades thee and protects the wife where danger or dishonor lurks. Safest and seemliest by her husband stays, who guards her, or with her the worst endures." The concept and the ideas of the patriarchy, or the structure of humans to God, is tested in Book 9, as you'll see. Eve is kind of offended by the remark, and this is important in the story. In the social system created by God, Eve is pushing back against Adam's judgment, which, as a creation from Adam, and second too, she should obey. But what is pulling Eve away at this point? Has pride entered into paradise? She says she does not want to be distracted by conversation, as it will slow her work. She has a longing for independence, not power. I don't think she wants power, but I do not think she wants to be controlled either. Eve brings up a good point. How are we happy, still in fear of harm? How long do you live in fear before you start enjoying life again? Adam finally relinquishes and approves of the request and states, But God let free the will for what obeys. Reason is free, and reason he made right, but bid her well beware, and still erect, lest by some fair appearing good surprise she dictate false and misinform thee will to God what God expressly hath forbid. Have you ever knew something was going to happen, and you point it out, you plead, you explain, and you even try to reason with someone that this will occur if you continue to do that, but then they choose to do it anyway? Like fighting for the keys with a drunk friend who chooses to go home. If you lose the fight, they may lose their life. The stakes are high, and all the warning and advice falls on deaf ears. Adam gives in, and they part in separate ways. And some lines are so soft but powerful. The poem states, "From her husband's hand, her hand soft, she withdrew." Now Satan, disguised as a snake, is hoping to find Eve alone. But what are the chances of that, he thinks? Nothing would make his mission that easy. But then he spots the fairest unsupported flower, and I love that line. Think of the flower. What all does it signify? Fertility, spring, happiness, beauty. Milton is good here. He says, now Satan is struck by this angel-like human form she has. Her beauty is clearly nothing like he has ever seen before, and for a single second, it grounds him from his evil ambition. Her graceful innocence, her every air, her gesture, or least action overawed his malice, and with rapine sweet bereaved his fierceness of the fierce intent it brought. That space the evil one abstracted stood from his own evil, and for the time remained stupidly good, of enmity, disarmed, of guile, of hate, of envy, of revenge. But it would only last a second. There is no hope for the creator of hopelessness. But the hot hell that always in him burns, though in mid-heaven, soon ended his delight, and tortures him now more, the more he sees of pleasure not for him ordained. Then soon fierce hate he recollects, and all his thoughts of mischief, gradulating, thus excites. He wonders, how the heck did that happen? How could this earthly thing's beauty make him for a second forget the mission he was on? And to make clear his goal, he states it here. What hither brought us? Hate? Not love, nor hope of paradise for hell, here to taste of pleasure, but all pleasure to destroy, save what is in destroying. Other joy to me is lost. Pride never ceases to boil over in Satan. He wants so bad to undo all the good that has been created. Satan at this point shoots his shot, so to speak, and I love the way Milton describes how the serpent approaches. With tract oblique at first as one who sought access but feared to interrupt, sidelong he worked his way. You get a visual of the serpent coming up beside, almost like he does not see her, and then, just listen to this line. His gentle dumb expression turned at length the eye of Eve to mark his play. He, glad of her attention, gained with serpent tongue organic or impulse or vocal air. His fraudulent temptation thus began. What pours out of his mouth is the most seductive, flattering, and flirty language one can compose, ending with this. A goddess among gods, adored, served by angels numberless, thy daily train. So glozed the tempter, and his proem tuned into the heart of Eve his words made way, though at the voice much marveling, at length, not unamazed, she thus in answer spake. What may this mean? Language of man pronounced by tongue of brute, and human sense expressed? Imagine a slithering creature sliding up beside you and speaking. You would be taken back, astonished, probably confused. What weird type of miracle or event could cause this? But this is Satan's time to explain in a way that will entrap and deceive. The serpent says, I was not always like this. You see, I was like the other brutes of the forest. Until one day, while traversing the forest, he finds a goodly tree, fruit high enough where no other animals could reach, but the serpent climbing up spares not the fruit. He eats and finds a strange alteration that takes place within him. Reason and speech are added to his abilities, and he can think about things beyond just earth. He says, when I saw you, Eve, I could not help but admire your beauty. But beyond admire, I had to come and gaze upon you and worship. Now Eve replies to all of this, Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt the virtue of that fruit in thee first proved, but say, where grows this tree? From hence, how far? The plan is working to a T. Tempted like a catfish to a fine bait, hooked on the line, Satan begins to reel the prize in. To not allow the prize to get away, he presses faster and says, if thou accept my conduct, I can bring thee thither soon. Eve says, lead then, which he does not hesitate but proceeds at once. They approach the tree of prohibition, the root of all of our woe, which, when she sees the tree he's talking about, she says, "Oh, this is a waste of time. We cannot eat from this one. But of the tree we may not taste nor touch. God so commanded, and left the command sole daughter of his voice." She knows what not to do. There's no uncertainty or confusion about the tree. She even verbalizes what not to do. But listen here, I want to read the entire scene of Satan's deceit. Eve literally stands no chance. She has the full force of Satan against her, and no angels are there to intervene this time. Armed with only her free will to choose, the serpent persuasively speaks. "Those rigid threats of death, ye shall not die. How should ye? By the fruit? It gives you life to knowledge. By the threatener? Look on me. Me who have touched and tasted yet both live, and life more perfect have attained than fate meant me. By venturing higher than my lot. Shall that be shut to man which to the beast is open? Or will God incense his ire for such a petty trespass, and not praise rather your dauntless virtue, whom the pain of death denounced, whatever thing death be, deterred not from achieving what might lead to happier life? Knowledge of good and evil? Of good, how just? Of evil, if what is evil be real, why not known, since easier shunned?" He also says, "And what are gods, that man may not become as they, participating God-like food?" And he ends with, these, and many more, cause, import your need of their fair fruit. God is humane, reach then, and freely taste." His words pour into her heart. Fixed on the fruit she is staring at, the serpent's words are still ringing in her ears. It is reasonable. Proof is there that the serpent did not die. Is God wrong? Is God holding something back? Did God lie to us? Is he keeping a power from us that we could all have, that we deserve to have? For good unknown sure is not bad. So what is stopping me from reaching out and feeding both my mind and my body? So saying, her rash hand in evil hour, forth reaching to the fruit, she plucked, she eat. Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe, that all was lost. Back to the thicket slunk the guilty serpent, and well might for Eve, intent now only on her taste, not else regarded. Noticed how fast Satan exits the scene after the deed is done. He won, mission complete, and it was so easy. At this point, I noticed the major sins of the world start flooding into Eve, and I want to point these out real quick because I think they are important. First is pride in what she did. She's not ashamed at this point, and she continues to eat from the tree more. "Till dieted by thee I grow mature in knowledge, as the gods, who all things know, though other envy what they cannot give, for had the gift been theirs, it had not here thus grown." And then listen to the greed that starts to set in. "But to Adam, in what sort shall I appear? Shall I to him make known as yet my change, and give him to partake full happiness with me, or rather not, but keep the odds of knowledge in my power, without co-partner, so to add what wants in female sex, the more to draw his love, and render me more equal, and perhaps, a thing not undesirable, sometimes superior, for inferior, who is free?" Who is this person? The fruit gives her the power to change the social structure if she desires. At this point in the poem, we are having to get to know Eve all over again. It is important to realize that she is literally a different person at this point. Personality has been altered, almost as if a small piece of Satan himself has entered into her thoughts and actions. And as I'm reading through this section, both Satan and Eve start to kind of blur together. And after she thinks of Adam getting married to another woman, she concludes that Adam should share with her this woe, partake in the disobedience, perhaps a feeling of jealousy. At this point, Adam senses something is off, and he goes out to find Eve. Upon finding her, Eve just starts pouring out everything and letting him know what happened. The serpent, the fruit, the tree, how God was wrong, and the tree and the fruit are actually full of knowledge. As the serpent was spewing venom to deceive her, she turns around and she does the same to Adam. Adam, meanwhile, is in shock. What the heck has happened here? We had one command, one single rule not to break. Adam, still pure, not tainted by sin, is still hindered by his naive ways. Surely his wife would not seduce him into doing something evil. It hits him that she is lost. So sudden it happened. I mean, the angel Raphael, who gave them warning, literally just departed. Adam wonders how he can live without thee. Truly in love with her, he ponders something that only blind love would allow. And make sure you catch this here, because Jesus will ask him this in the next book. Do you love something on earth more than God? By loving Eve more than God, he can throw off the love of God and willingly disobey. Adam, before he even tastes the fruit, has set up an idol on earth. Mind warped in love, he tells Eve, bold deed, thou hast presumed, adventurous Eve, and peril great provoked, who thus hast dared. Have it been only coveting to the eye, that sacred food, sacred to absence, much more to taste it, under ban to touch, but past who can recall, or done undo. Some things in life you cannot undo. You can repent of the sin, but some sins have consequences that do not just disappear in the past. You live with them daily. Adam is low. He says we are one flesh. To lose thee would be to lose myself. Eve pours one last dose of tempting explanation, and Adam gives in. She gave him of that fair enticing fruit with liberal hand. He scrupled not to eat, against his better knowledge, not deceived, but fondly overcome with female charm. Earth trembled from her entrails, as again in pangs the nature gave a second groan, skyward and muttering thunder some sad drops. Wept at completing of the mortal sin, original, while Adam took no thought, eating his fill, nor Eve to iterate her formal trespass feared. Satan planted the seed, and from Eve sprouted sin. Adam, too weak, too meek, too controlled by earthly emotions to fend off the sin, both lost to God, lost in the world. Satan's victory here is not something to gloss over. This proves there is power in Satan. Henceforth, truth would always be under attack by the power of deception, lies, and false hope. Adam will start experiencing all the traits of sin flooding into him as well. Lust appears to hit him first. Immediately, his mind turns to a new lustful sex, a more rapacious sexual desire he had never really experienced before. Both retire and they, fall into each other's desires, so to speak, and like the calm before the storm, everything seems okay as they fall asleep. But upon awaking from their exotic escapades, the poem says, as from unrest, and each the other viewing, soon found their eyes how opened, and their minds how darkened. Innocence, that as a veil had shadowed from knowing ill, was gone, just confidence in native righteousness, and honor from about them naked left, the guilty shame. After this, they spiral, the full force of hell entering their minds. Not only tears rained at their eyes, but high winds worse within began to rise high passions, anger, hate, mistrust, suspicion, discord, and shook sore their inward state of mind. Calm region, once full of peace, now tossed and turbulent. Adam starts to call out Eve. Would thou hast hearkened to my words and stayed with me as I besought thee, when that strange desire of wandering, this unhappy morn, I know not whence possessed thee, we had then remained still happy, not as now despoiled of all the good, shamed, naked, miserable. Eve, offended, replies, what words have passed thy lips, Adam, severe? Was I to have never parted from thy side, as good as grown there still a lifeless rib? Being as I am, why didst not thou the head command me absolutely not to go, going in such danger as thou saidst? Now this is the first time Adam is incensed. He gets angry. He lets passion overtake his usual calmness. Is this the love? Is this the recompense of mine to thee, ingrateful Eve, expressed immutable when thou were lost? Not I, who might have lived, enjoyed immortal bliss, yet willingly choose rather death with thee. And am I not upbraided as the cause of thy transgressing? You're blaming me for not being stern enough, not controlling enough, for not being more forceful? Anger is boiling over in both. With no history of dealing with this, no experience to cope, they continue to spiral. Flaming the fire, Adam continues, I also erred in overmuch admiring what seemed in thee so perfect that I thought no evil durst attempt thee. But I rue that error now which it becomes my crime, and thou the accuser. Thus it shall befall him who, to worth in woman, over trusting, lets her will rule. Restraint she will not brook, and, left to herself, if evil ends ensue, she first his weak indulgence will accuse. Book 9 ends with no hope for them. Thus they in mutual accusation spent the fruitless hours, but neither self-condemning, and of their vain contest appeared no end. With that being said, let's move into Book 10. I'll start with the overview. and we'll roll into it. Book 10 overview. God explains to the angels that it is not their fault that they could not prevent Satan from acting. The Son of God is commanded to go down to earth and divvy out judgment. He pities the helpless sinners and provides some clothes to wear. We meet sin and death, who are waiting at the gates of hell for Satan. Satan enters back into pandemonium and relates his story. Hissing is the reply as they all turn to serpents. Adam and Eve are still being struck with the realization of what they did and what they lost. They bow down to God in shame, regret, and repentance. Let's move into Book 10. For what can escape the eye of God all-seeing or deceive his heart? What has occurred is instantly known by God, but that did not stop Satan. Hindered not Satan to attempt the mind of man with strength entire and free will armed, complete to have discovered and repulsed whatever wiles of foe or seeming friend. Milton is reassuring us that it was not God's fault. Their free will was used a little too freely. Now the angelic guards ascend back into heaven. Imagine you are on watch, and your only enemy, Satan, sneaks by and destroys that which you were supposed to protect. That's a court-martial in my opinion, and I bet that flight back to heaven was a very slow one for those angels. But God is not upset. He's not surprised at what has happened, and he tells the angels it was not their fault. God then requests that his son go down and judge the transgressors on earth. The son agrees and heads down to lay down the hammer on the two sinners and Satan as well. Adam and Eve hear the Son of God walking, and oh, the shame. Where art thou, Adam? What detains you? He's poking at them here. He knows what they did. It's like asking a kid with icing all over his face if he ate the cake. He says, come forth, show yourself. Imagine the shame, the letdown, that first look when your eyes meet with the Son of God's. The poem states, love was not in their looks either to God or to each other. Betrayal and loss of trust has a way of tearing love down. What once was beautiful becomes tainted. It becomes repulsive, and it can take some time to repair. And a famous exchange is relayed next, which I will read. Adam states, I heard thee in the garden, and of thy voice, afraid, being naked, hid myself, to whom the gracious judge without revile replied, my voice thou oft hast heard, and hast not feared, but still rejoiced. How is it now become so dreadful to thee, that thou art naked? Who hath told thee? Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I gave thee charge thou shouldest not eat? To whom thus Adam, sore beset, replied. He starts off appearing to take accountability, but then, in his new-found reason, states that you already know what is in my heart, so that is actually what I'll go ahead and provide you. This woman, whom thou madest to be my help, and gavest me as thy perfect gift, so good, so fit, so acceptable, so divine, that from her hand I could suspect no ill, and what she did, whatever in itself, her doing seemed to justify the deed. She gave me of the tree, and I did eat. To whom the sovereign providence thus replied, and this is one of my favorite lines in the poem because it is relatable to our lives. The Son of God replies, was she thy God, that her thou didst obey before his voice? What or who has become God in your life? A person, a lover, a spouse, a child, or a pesky phone? Did her free will override yours, Adam? Are you not the leader? Now Jesus, turning to Eve, does not even mention her name, saying, say, woman, what is this which thou hast done? To whom sad Eve, with shame nigh overwhelmed, confessing soon, yet not before her judge, bold or loquacious, thus abashed, replied, the serpent me beguiled, and I did eat. She also blames as well. Immediately the Son administers judgment to the serpent, which I personally kind of felt bad for the old snake. It literally had no choice in the matter. He then judges Eve next. Thy sorrow I will greatly multiply. By the conception children thou shalt bring, in sorrow forth, and to thy husband's will thou shalt submit. He over thee shall rule. And on Adam next. Because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife, and eaten of the tree concerning which I charge thee, saying, thou shalt not eat thereof. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, thou in sorrow shalt eat thereof all the days of thy life. Now after handing out the judgment, the Son of God takes pity on them, as you will see here. And the instant stroke of death, denounced that day, removed far off, then pitying how they stood before him naked to the air that now must suffer change, disdained not to begin, thenceforth to form of servant, to assume, as when he washed his servant's feet, so now, as father of his family, he clad the nakedness with skins of beasts or slain, or as the snake with youthful coat repaid, and thought not much to clothe his enemies. Notice the connection of washing feet, as Jesus would wash his disciples' feet in the gospel. Also notice the compassion and mercy. Death has been delayed, and honestly, they got off pretty good. We now turn our attention back to Satan, who is on his way back to hell after his victory over the new dark world he has just corrupted. There are two things impatiently waiting for him at the gates of hell: sin and death, chomping at the bits to join in the chaos Satan has just created. Death starts off. O son, why sit we here, each other viewing, idly while Satan, our great author, thrives in other worlds and happier seat provides for us, his offspring dear? Death can feel Satan's success, and its strength is rising inside, and death is ready to go, and calls sin his shadow. Listen here to what death says. Thou, my shade inseparable, must with me along, for death from sin no power can separate. Think about that. There is no death without sin, and there is no sin without death. Now death proposes they build a bridge from hell to earth, a highway, so to speak, where they can fast-track their works. Sin is a follower of death, and answers, Go whither fate and inclination strong leads thee. I shall not lag behind nor err. The way thou leading, such a scent I draw, of carnage prey innumerable, and taste the savor of death from all things there that live. Nor shall I do the work thou enterprises, be wanting, but afford thee equal aid. Like two lions walking into a valley of sheep, they are about to make their move. Over the foaming deep, high arched a bridge, of length prodigious, joining the wall, immovable, of all this now fenceless world, forfeit to death, from hence a passage broad, smooth, easy, inoffensive, down to hell. Sin and death had both crossed over, and on their path to what was formerly paradise, they noticed Satan flying back to hell. Now, Satan apparently did not stay on earth that long after capturing it. The poem states, But when he saw descend the Son of God to judge them, terrified, he fled, not hoping to escape, but shunned the present, fearing guilty what his wrath might suddenly inflict. That past returned by night, and listening where their hapless pair sat in their sad discourse in various plant, thence gathered his own doom, which understood not instant, but a future time. With joy and tiding fraught to hell he now returned, and at the brink of chaos, near the foot of his new wondrous pontifice, unhoped, met, who to meet him came, his offspring dear. With death and sin being the offspring of Satan, he gives them their inheritance early, so to speak. He says, Thine now is all the world, thy virtue hath won. What thy hands builded not, thy wisdom gained. With odds what war hath lost, and fully avenged, are full in heaven. For the time being, Satan is on dark cloud 9. Dominoes are just falling in his favor. Death and sin have their orders. Satan tells them just to go out and wreak havoc on earth. The two, death and sin, set out again for their destination. Now Satan enters back into hell, and as he is speaking to his evil crew, he recounts all his deeds and actions. I have paved a way, he tells them, and sin and death are over there right now, plowing the fields of destruction, ready for the new seeds to be planted. Satan with humor recounts how it happened, and listen to the jeer here. Him by fraud I seduced from his creator, and the more to increase your wonder, with an apple. He thereat offended, worth your laughter, hath given up both his beloved man and all his world, to sin and death a prey, and so to us, without our hazard, labor, or alarm, to range in and dwell and over man, to rule as over all he should have ruled. Satan ends his speech, and like a politician who steps back from the podium to bask in the applause, he hears something else. So having said a while, he stood expecting their universal shout and high applause, to fill his ears when contrary he hears, on all sides from innumerable tongues, a dismal universal hiss, the sound of public scorn. Confused, but not confused for long, because almost instantly this happens. His visage drawn, he felt too sharp and spare, his arms clung to his ribs, his legs entwining each other, till supplanted down he fell, a monstrous serpent on his belly prone, reluctant, but in vain. A greater power now ruled him, punished in the shape he sinned, according to his doom. Judgment sooner or later catches you. Of ugly serpents, horror on them fell, and horrid sympathy for what they saw. They felt themselves now changing. A grove of fruit trees appeared nearby, and the newly formed snakes, parched with scalding thirst and hunger, climbed up to eat the fruit. But when biting down, they bit into ashes. And notice the ways of punishment similar to the offense, but the two new creations, sin and death, they enter back into the story. Meanwhile in paradise, the hellish pair soon arrived, sin there in power before, once actual, now in body and to dwell, habitual habitant behind her death. Sin and death discuss their plans, divvy up the world, so to speak, and strike out in separate ways. Departed, they begin their work, and the work is not good by any means. All the while the Son of God is witnessing what is going on, and he is recounting it to his heavenly host. He sees sin and death enter the world here, and a strange thing is mentioned. Of passion, I to them had quitted all, at random yielded up their misrule, and know not that I called and drew them hither, my hellhounds, to lick up the draught and filth which man's polluting sin with taint hath shed on what was pure. We have to ask, who is really in charge here? Something all-powerful has to be in power of everything. He then calls his mighty angels to do some mighty things. The angels are commanded to tilt the earth on its axis and alter the sun. Climates are changed, and the perfect world Adam and Eve knew now experiences extremes. This sets the stage for what death and sin began to do. Thus began outrage from lifeless things, but discord first, daughter of sin, among the irrational, death introduced through fierce antipathy. The animals go to war with one another, and animals will no longer walk with man. Fear grips the world, but the ones who are going to suffer the most we turn back to. Adam is drowning in self-pity, shame, resentment, and all the new feelings brought on by disobedience. O miserable of happy, is this the end of this new glorious world, and me so late, the glory of that glory, who now become accursed of blessed? Hide me from the face of God, whom to behold was then my height of happiness. Hide me from the face of God. You do not get to hide from your actions. Truth and justice have a way of making you stare it directly in the face. Adam eventually accepts his fate. Thy punishment then justly is at his will. Be it so far, for I submit his doom is fair. That dust I am, and shall to dust return. O welcome hour, whenever. Why delays his hand to execute what his decree fixed on this day? Why do I overlive? Why am I mocked with death and lengthened out to deathless pain? Would a quick death be better? Is it more painful to wake up daily amongst the realization of what you have done? The poor man just continues on his path, questioning death, questioning sin, and trying to wrap his head around his new reality. He questions why all mankind must suffer because of him. In wondering why death has not yet done his job on him, a brilliant line is found in the poem. Shall truth fail to keep her word? Justice divine not hasten to be just? But death comes not at call, just divine, mends not her slowest pace for prayers or cries. Justice is not always instant. In fact, seldom is it instant. We want it to be quick, but regardless of how loud you cry or how much you may pray, it only comes when it's ready to be sent. Eve enters the scene and speaks softly and tries to make the situation better. Like the serpent he accuses her of being, he almost hisses out his reply. He does not seem to think of her as highly as he did before. Out of my sight, thou serpent, that name best befits thee, with him leagued, thyself is false and hateful. Comparing your wife to Satan is pretty low, but on the other hand, she did just flip the world upside down. Now, here we get a glimpse of Adam at his lowest, almost wishing Eve had never been created, wishing to have never loved. Lost completely in emotion, he cries, "Oh, why did God, creator wise, that people highest heaven, with spirits masculine, create and last this novelty on earth, this fair defect of nature, and not fill the world at once with men as angels, without feminine, or find some other way to generate mankind? Dang, you just disobey God. Now you question his authority and plans, and you haven't even accepted any of the blame yet. The once good man Adam has descended into something smug and disgraceful. At this point, Eve falls down to Adam's feet and begs for forgiveness. Although the first to sin, this is also the first sign of humanness coming back into them. Kindness is contagious, and the best way to mend a heart is to forgive and take responsibility. And the only way to keep the welded pieces intact is to cover them with love. Soon his heart relented towards her, his life so late and so delight, now at his feet submissive in distress, Creature so fair his reconcilement seeking, his counsel whom she had displeased, his aid at once disarmed his anger, all he lost. There was a turning point in the fall at this point. They had been falling into chaos ever since the initial bite out of the apple. But this single act of asking for forgiveness allows them both to see there is still good left in the world. They're just going to have to work harder than ever to see it. Adam, the man, starts to reappear, and he is no longer complaining and blaming about his issues. But rise, let us no more contend nor blame each other, blamed enough elsewhere, but strive in offices of love how we may lighten each other's burdens in our share of woe. If you are married, there is some very good advice here. The question of how can I lighten your load to your partner can turn a bad day into a good night. And if you focus on removing obstacles, pain, and burdens out of your partner's way, and they in return start doing the same for you, that is when you start to accomplish things you never knew were possible. And it's very hard to do as we are, we're kind of selfish by nature. So many lessons in this book. Eve replies, and after a bit comes to the conclusion that they should just end it and self-destruct themselves. Why stand we longer shivering under fears that show no end but death, and hath the power of many ways to die the shortest choosing, destruction with destruction to destroy? What a dark and amazing set of lines. Adam says he does not think that is the best answer. We have angered God enough to go and try to alter his plans again. Reason is starting to come back to Adam, and he says, we actually got off pretty lucky. Death has been deferred to some later point, and we still have to have kids and populate the world. He starts to feel optimistic, and similar to how Eve came to him, he is about to do the same. What better can we do than to the place, repairing where he judged us, prostrate fall, before him reverent, and there confess humbly our faults, and pardon beg with tears, watering the grounds, and with our sighs the air, frequenting, sent from hearts, contrite and sign of sorrow, unfeigned and humiliation meek. So we end book 10 with them both begging for forgiveness. What else but favor, grace, and mercy shown? Such a great poem so far, and the lessons on morality, pride, and sin are they're just timeless. We have 2 books left, 11 and 12, which we'll finish up in the next video, and then we move on to Paradise Regained. I hope you all are enjoying these episodes. Please like and share if so, as it helps the algorithm push these episodes out. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions. My coffee is always linked in the description below. You can use the code THECAUSE for 15% off your first order. Sip some amazing coffee, enjoy a great book, and I will see you very, very soon. Stay blessed. Love y'all.
I was making lots of noise, busking on the city streets. I came back from Brooklyn, but you didn't come back for me.